everyone, brilliant friends. Thank you once again for joining me. With the investigations of Grenfell Tower underway, you can clearly see the people in the stands that were there to watch proceedings as those below voted for a Tory councillor to lead the investigations. Those people in the stands put their hands up for the councillor that they wanted to lead this, but they were not counted. All who were counted were those within the system. Now, this is where the system has always been wrong and has continued to be wrong all along. It shows how the corrupt system really is, as the system is investigating the system itself. The same in all other cases as well, where children are removed by social services. Any complaints go to the council ends up with the council investigating itself. This leads to wrongful conclusions, which then have to go to the so-called independent ombudsman, also almost always side with the professionals. And this drags the process out so long that people almost always give up by then. Investigations rarely ever get fairly dealt with, and this is why they are pushed, when they pushed for an inquiry over an inquest. It's a tactic where they really all need to be arrested for perversion of justice. We see this awful incident being treated like every other that councils have to look into to investigate their own misconduct, whilst people outside stand and blame the immigrants, and the reality is our system is the problem itself. It is corrupt, it is self-serving, no less than we have seen Theresa May buy her way back to the Prime Minister's seat with our public money. They claim they don't want immigrants here, but they are corrupt here anyway themselves. Other people outside also blame religion for everything that's wrong in our country, failing to look at our own back door, their own systems, their own failing governments who put money before lives, business before family and love. Think about this. Anti-religion is a political stance. I say this because when you look at it, we're all the same when it comes to personal beliefs, whether that's a belief in a religion, a god, or a non-belief. We know that there are religious people who will do harm to others of differing beliefs, but we also know that there are people of non-religious backgrounds who also kill. There are paedophiles, there are white people who murder and do harm to children as well. But when that happens, we don't blame the colour, we don't blame the race, we don't blame the country or the background they come from. This is where we're getting things so wrong. We're all the same when it comes to beliefs, whether it's religious or political. I have found that when you disagree with people who anger at religious people who don't integrate with us and those who don't befriend them because of their own rudeness towards them, as they tar all of them with the same brush, those same people behave the same way when they protect their political ideas and views. As I say, anti-religion is a political stance. Think about how many wars are created and how our politicians create wars to, end people's belief systems. And those people who hold political views that religion is to blame for all that is wrong in the world fail to see that their political stance is no better than the views of the religious person who fights for his religion and fails to be inclusive of others. They agree with rounding them up and throwing them all out of the country because they believe differently to them, yet call for freedom of speech. Their behaviour towards others seem to be only inclusive of their own type. They agree with wars in their country that send them running for refuge in other countries. They treat them as if they're lower class humans, where Theresa May wants to tear up the Human Rights Bill. Those people, not one of them should complain that their own human rights are not being met because there is no human rights bill. Whatever their political or religious standing, if they attack you and block you for political ideals, and they won't have it any other way than their way, If they attack you for being all inclusive of all types of people, regardless of their beliefs and their views, then congratulate yourself. You have won a battle that they have yet to win. Let them stay in their own self-inflicting misery until their own light dawns too, because it is they who are carrying anger and bitterness and hatred and a belief that they are better than others. Standards Watchdog says that British politics is at tipping point after surge in abuse and intimidation, but know this is all a ploy to stop you from being informed. If your wish is to be open to all people from all walks of life and all belief systems, get past the abuse from people who attack you online. They do so because they do not have the guts to confront you. That's not to say that online information is to be ignored, of course not. Define the abuse from the facts. Online is a place where we can get our information right from the horse's mouth. You really need to turn off your TV sets and get your news online from the mouths of those who spoke, not from a third party, not from the top 1% and their agenda. The trolls are secondary to this. They are those who need to defend their stance. But as I say, they do not have the guts to confront problems face to face. Each of you has a favourite colour. Do you need to convince other people that your colour is better than the other person's colour? The reason you do not need to do this is because you are accepting of the other person's way of perceiving. Your perception is what is right for you as an individual. Fear is a powerful tool that can be used to control, and the elite are using it to their best advantage to gain for themselves, as we've seen in the case of Theresa May, using our money to remain in power by buying it, as she gave away the 1.5 billion. You are already seeing how fear is being used to manipulate the actions of others. You have one side, the side of the Tories and the Labour PLP, who cannot believe that certain things are being accepted and they still continue the same way they always have. But there are people with intelligence on both sides too, also the people on the other side that cannot believe you are rejecting to wanting a world of peace, socialism, caring for one another, supporting each other, ensuring that there is a decent health service for all, good, affordable education for all, so young people are not lumbered with huge debt. What is there not to like about this picture? It's only because of fear that everything will collapse in the money market and things like that. In the end, you are left with the concept of who is right and who is wrong. We are telling you that the concept of right and wrong no longer holds. There is only the necessary and the unnecessary. It will be of who is right for you and who is wrong for you, and not the masses. People have been worshipping this false god for too long, trying to hold the system together with the glue called money rather than love. The concept of allowing other opinions is difficult when you think on it. The whole concept of allowing leaves the person who is preaching in a position of powerlessness. The idea of accepting leaves whoever is preaching in a position of personal power. It's time for the ruling of the self, and it will spread and become the ruling of all. Like the concept of the pool of water and the stack of sugar cubes, and how change cannot happen from the top down, but change must happen from the bottom up. When you speak in politics, that is a difficult place to be, at the bottom. But once it begins to melt and begins to change and bring those issues that are stacked to a level that is equal to where they are, things become more equal in all ways. Remember, you have exposed so many times to the education that teaches fear. You have spent a great deal of time teaching children the word no and speaking to children with the word don't. You've been programmed from an early age with your no and your don't. You can't speak up, you can't confront, you must sit down and you must listen and obey. Things are changing and people are now learning how to step into their personal power. Look at the many changes that have been happening that has brought about acceptance of different sexuality concepts, acceptance of transgender, but many of us are still stuck in acceptance of culture differences. It's another barrier that we must get past. Reading the newspaper and reading comments, you get to see the culture of hate that is the biggest one of all that continues to rule over all of us. Greatest hurdle to overcome is this fear and hatred. Where many countries have voted in presidents and leaders who will continue the culture of hatred, this shows that this barrier is the greatest wall that people put up, and those on the other side want to break down. Remember, love is the greatest weapon against hatred and fear. Imagine a world where you're all accepting of one another, working only for what is right for each individual on an individual level. Become knowledgeable beyond the education that has been imposed upon you. History is only in the books that have been approved, and they have been approved by those who have needed to keep you under control. Their control is slipping, but it's always been seen that when there is a revolt against something, that something comes back even though you do not wish it to, because it's an expected way of controlling. It's often the fact that that leaders only determine that the new leader is not good for so many years, and this will last, but then it will need to be replaced also. When we see Jeremy Corbyn acting with acceptance and love and winning over crowds of people, surely it must dawn on people who are still stuck in the idea that the system that we have been working under is so out of date. We're ready for a wave of change for the better, and that is being supportive of all. It is difficult for people to accept that they are resisting change. It's difficult for everyone, and some will have a harder time than others. Under a Labour government, it is those at the top turn to experience the difficulties that come from having less. But remember, it will never have the same effect as it does on those at the bottom having less. In this case, it's not about taking control or taking over. It's about making things equal and fair. It is interesting that sometimes you still have a fear of an equal society. Things that have not worked before do not mean that they won't work if tried again. It's simply that it wasn't right at the time when tried in the past. People are not ready to fight for it, and people were still fine with having rulers rule over them, keeping them in slavery. This is not the case anymore. There are many, many more awake now to themselves and to their own personal power. You need to look into your own minds and ask yourselves, what am I doing? Really, isn't this crazy? And in the end, it might send you a little bit crazy thinking about it, how you've been acting for so long. It's you that you're not accepting when you do this as much as it is others, because you're all reflections of each other, and what you see in others is what you project onto them. It's for you to accept that your judgments and lack of acceptance is about you and not them. The one thing you can be sure of is change, so to say you cannot change is not normal or natural. Change is the most natural thing in the world, but you are being stubborn, and this stubbornness is a habit that is hard to release. Try to let it go. Try to loosen up and free yourself from the fear of what could happen if you become less rigid. Accept change. It harms no one and it's not harmful. The harm is the resistance, not the change itself. So if they change your highway and you choose not to follow the change, that's when you can do harm. But if you follow the change, there's no difficulty except the change. Have you become so foggy brained you can't see things, and the same as they have changed, there is a desire in each of you to see things the same. If you're experiencing things to be the same, that will be your frustration. And if you're open to change, that will be your illumination. Many feel that they just don't fit in, and that's because they're trying to fit into old patterns, yet they are the same shape as the old patterns, like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. It is you who has to change to fit, change into a more smoother shape, one that's easier to fit into all the holes. It's down to you. The imagination of the people is easily manipulated, and everything is made to appear so much harder because they need you to fit in so that you will continue to fight against what they see as wrong. They want you to stop evolving. They don't want you to be accepting, and this will mean that there will be no one to sell bombs to and guns to, and no reason to sell them for. When money comes before love, this is the result. They don't want to see love in the world. It's not profitable. And money is their God. They have taught you that money should be yours. The masses amassing. It has been the concept of who can be gathered around a particular concept. There's a testing of who can be manipulated and who cannot. In the past, it's been difficult for some people to speak their minds for fears of how they would be interpreted. But one man has said that has had the guts to speak out, and the people are starting to listen. This is an amazing way forward, and whilst the diversions among those who have refused to be manipulated anymore, for those others and the divisions between opinions are becoming greater than it has ever been before, and so they will up the ante, as the newspapers will then carry stories blown out of proportion to make you fear more and believe that you are in mortal danger, and so you stay loyal to them and their wish for you to need them. This is why so many continue to vote for them. Part of the fear now is that those moulds are no longer holding the people. Since you refer to yourselves as the melting pot, there are more different varieties of people than there ever have been before. There is fear that is connected with losing control. The top 1% will continue to react. They are losing their grip, and so they show their power toys to keep you all in line and in grip of fear. All their bombs and their arms and everything, they'll show them up to you that they will keep control. Yet they do not have the power to stop certain nationalities and now feel that they are being overpowered, and they are. You've been able to create a shield that has been able to keep away a large part of manipulation. Realise you're not without defence as you group together, and you are your own defence. There are many more now who think alike, who are not willing to be manipulated anymore, and you should join that party of people. Stay strong and be in your power, and do as Jeremy Corbyn does. The world is in a state of healing from the bottom up, and you are a part of that process. Thank you, everybody. Love you for joining me again today and listening to me. Bless you. Let's hope for a better world, a socialist world that everybody cares for each other. Once again, namaste. Bye for now.